Well, breaking report for special Saturday Revealed report. I want to bring to you content about the January 6th pipe bomber because there's a lot of spin to the narrative, and we really want to dive into it. That's what the Revealed report was created for, and especially the Revealed Radio Network was created primarily for the purpose to slash through all the lies of this age and to give you ideological purity. And so I'm glad that you tuned in for your hour of excellence in the podcast world. The radical left, they always want to spin the narrative, and it's really hard to know what the truth is today. So we want to be a guiding light in all the midst of the chaos, confusion, and darkness that's spewed out from PMS, NBC, and all the rest of the drive-by mainstream or lamestream media. Before we get into the January 6th pipe bomber and what we were able to dig up on that, I want to say that we are praying for a Granite City police officer, as there was a tragic situation. I want to talk about the local level here in Granite City, Illinois. A local police officer was shot by I believe he was 26 years of age, and we'll talk more about it on Monday, because it really deals with J.B. Pritzker and Illinois soft on crime, because this individual had a history of crime, and he was out on the streets, and there was a call, and the police showed up, and the man shot the officer, I believe it was 6 times. Thankfully, the officer is okay. Our prayers are with him, and the suspect has been caught finally this morning. The shooting took place yesterday, and finally they caught him real early this morning. So I'm glad that they caught the criminal. And we believe that there should be a penalty, and we do pray for his soul, but we do believe that there should be ramifications for such hideous acts as that. Our prayers are with all police officers across the United States. We know it is a very dangerous time to be a police officer, and we want to say that we are praying for you. Also, we understand that you have a great pressure placed upon you because you're expected to be perfect, even though sometimes your life could be on the line and everybody else can make mistakes, but police officers. So our prayers are with the police officers at this time, especially the Granite City, Illinois police officers. Thank you for your service. God bless you. We salute you for trying to keep our city safe. The January 6th pipe bomber. So over 4 years, nearly 5 years, the Biden administration was unable to crack this case. But we find that Christopher Wray on February 28, 2023, painted the picture that the FBI was really trying very hard, but it was just a hard case to crack, Here's Christopher Wray in his words.
I have enormous confidence in the team, the dedicated team that is focused exclusively on that investigation. And we have devoted loads and loads of effort into that specific investigation. And those folks, those FBI agents, analysts, and professional staff, I have total confidence.
So it took over 4 years for the Biden administration to fail at. It took less than a year for the Trump FBI and administration to be able to crack the case. And so you find that Christopher Wray was saying, well, we're trying to do everything we can. We're putting all our resources and assets into trying to figure out who planted these January 6th pipe bombs. But yet you can see either they were grossly incompetent like Lion Biden and Calamity Connie Harris and that whole administration, or they were lying like Lion Biden, and they were just spinning the narrative because the suspect did not fit their narrative and the ideology that they were spilling out in their lamestream media. So we can see that you let me know what you think. Drop it in the chat. Let me know if you think they were either grossly incompetent or was the Biden administration, Christopher Wray, the FBI lying to us like they have a history of doing. So we find that the FBI at that time, instead of trying to figure out who the pipe bomber actually was, they were going after grandma, they were going after grandpa, the horn hat man, anybody who was there on January 6th that was wearing a MAGA hat or showed signs of being a conservative. They were weaponizing every department to go after them. They were weaponizing the FBI. They were weaponizing the DOJ. They were weaponizing even the NSA. They were expanding the Capitol Police to go after any MAGA person, anybody who was conservative that was there, that was not even breaking laws, was not even breaking into the Capitol on that very day. They weaponized every department to go after them, even the U.S. Postal Service. And we'll talk about that momentarily. They even justified January 6th to try to take Trump off the ballot so that he could not run for being president of the United States ever again. They began to try to use this to legally go after him. They also committed a probe, which was really breaking the constitutional rights of privacy that we have on the conservative side of the aisle by pushing Arctic Frost, which was a way to go after every conservative especially every conservative in the media. And I'm going to give you some details of what they did here momentarily, but I want to tell you that January 6th, they said, was the gross darkest day in American history because they wanted to paint the narrative that this was MAGA people who are nothing more than white supremacists. They're just the KKK 2.0, the Gestapo, the brown shirt fascists that was trying to get Trump in there, trying to say that the election was rigged so we can get rid of Biden and all of that, and then push white supremacy and try to make America white again. That was the whole narrative that they pushed. And yet they didn't go after this suspect because you'll see here momentarily, it blows that wide open. It exposes the fact that that's not the truth. And so I want to show you, though, the expansion that took place under the Biden administration after January 6th. This is what they were really doing. This is from the ACLU. It's entitled 5 Things to Know About NSA Mass Surveillance and the Coming Fight in Congress. And I quote, Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act permits the U.S. government to engage in mass, warrantless surveillance of American international communications, including phone calls, text messages, emails, social media messages, and web browsing. The government claims to be pushing vaguely defined foreign intelligence targets, but its targets need not to be spies, terrorists, or criminals. They can be virtually any foreigner abroad. Journalists, academic researchers, scientists, and business people. And in the course of the surveillance, the government casts a wide net that ensnares the communications of ordinary Americans on a massive scale in violation of our constitutional rights. It continues to say, critically, while Section 702 does not allow the NSA to target Americans at the outset, vast quantities of our communications are still searched and amassed in government databases simply because we are in touch with people abroad. And this is the bait and switch. Although the laws allow surveillance of foreigners abroad for foreign intelligence purposes, the FBI routinely exploit this rich source of our information by searching those databases to find and examine the communications of individual Americans for the use in domestic investigations. Although the government often seeks to portray the surveillance as targeted and narrow, the reality is that it takes place on a massive scale. Section 702 has morphed into a domestic surveillance tool. Although Congress intended Section 702, at least they say, to be used for counterterrorism purposes, it's frequently used today to pursue domestic investigations of all kinds. Both the FBI and CIA have access to some of the raw data produced by this surveillance, and they increasingly use that access to examine the private communications of Americans they are investigating, all without a warrant. FBI agents routinely run searches looking for information about Americans as part of criminal investigations, including those that have nothing to do with national security. So let me just also put this in context with everything else that was going on at the time. Remember, under the Biden administration, they also wanted to push Build Back Better, which was just the Agenda 2030 plan, which was the Great Reset. And during that time frame, they were trying to weaponize corporations, merging a public-private partnership with the federal government and private corporations so that they can use these private corporations to push down their agenda on the people, bypassing your constitutional rights. And as part of that, they were implementing what was called ESG scoring, environmental, social, and governance scores. If you had a good environmental, social, governance score, then you could get credit, you could get loans, you could do transactions in business. If you didn't have a good score, then they were going to try to choke off your funding, choke off your assets and your ability to have business transactions. And they wanted to funnel that into businesses that would bend the knee to the government demands. At the same time, they were trying to centralize everything through the Federal Reserve and even trying to weaponize the Federal Reserve banks to be able to spy in on you if you have any money over $600, any transaction over $600, which would have crushed the local small banks and it would have moved everything through the Federal Reserve. Simultaneously, they wanted to start tracking digital footprint. They wanted to look at your digital footprint to see what you were putting on social media pages. What were you saying about social justice causes? Were you for them? Were you against them? How are you helping the ecological issues of climate change? How are you helping it? How are you hurting it? This all was packed in to them wanting to track your digital footprint. At the same time, they were using January 6th to expand their surveillance state. They were even expanding the Capitol Police, as you can see from this Political article back then. And I quote, with that in mind, Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger, has sought to shift the agency's identity as a traditional police force with a focus on Capitol Hill to a protective force built on intelligence gathering, threat assessment, and flexing its nationwide authority and jurisdiction. It now has an intelligence bureau with dozens of agents, as well as field officers in Florida and California, with more possible in Massachusetts, Wisconsin, and Texas. And you are paying tax dollars for this surveillance. But those shifts come at a cost. Capitol Police now operates with a $791.5 million budget, up more than 70% since the Capitol attack. Even accounting for inflation, that's more than 7 times the 9/11 era budget, end quote. So they were expanding their surveillance state and they were making you pay for it while they tried to spy in on you. And if that wasn't enough, here's what the Yahoo News had to say at the time, which it said the Postal Service is running a covert operations program that monitors American social media posts. I quote, the law enforcement arm of the U.S. Postal Service has been quietly running a program that tracks and collects American social media posts, including those about planned protests, according to a document obtained by Yahoo News, end quote. They were also merging with Facebook and Google and Twitter at the time to try to silence and shut up every conservative that would have a voice against what they were doing. What they were doing was trying to push a nanny state. They were trying to push a globalized agenda, and they were trying to do it at a nation level by pushing a blend of Marxism and fascism, saying it's out for the good of the people, while they were using corporations to try to suppress you into bending the knee to what they were saying. Canada did it very well to shut down the trucker protests when they began to freeze assets. When people couldn't do banking or get money or spend, when they would control what you can buy or sell. I don't know. Sounds a little bit like Revelation 13 to me. When they began to freeze the assets, that's how they began to shut down the trucker protests. That's what they were trying to do in America. That's what the World Economic Forum was talking about, Klaus Schwab. That's what they were wanting to push, to try to get everybody to bend the knee and buy into this new world order so they could have a global reset. And they were trying to practice a surveillance state on United States of American citizens and primarily on conservatives. These were the same ones that wanted you, to tell the federal authorities if you had, sorry, been dealing with sickness here late. It wanted you to tell federal authorities if you had somebody, a neighbor in your city that was outside during COVID-19, because they knew that the likelihood was they were probably conservatives, and it was a way for you to rat out other conservatives. They were trying to purge every system there was with the COVID-19 mandates. They were trying to purge the military. They were trying to purge the police force. They were trying to purge the medical field, because they knew predominantly it was conservatives that wanted to stand for individual liberty and freedom, and they wanted to purge us out of every aspect. That's why we need to thank God that President Trump won the election. That's why we need to make sure the radical left does not win the midterms, because that's their agenda. They want to push a nanny state. They want to push a surveillance state on the American people. In addition to that, they began to start up what was called Arctic frost. And this is from your very own Revealed Dispatch. This is an article I read previously. I want to read it again. Arctic frost when justice goes cold. They called it Arctic frost. We call it the blueprint for tyranny, because the same frozen breath that chilled the Trump investigations is the same one breathing down the necks of parents, pastors, patriots, and pro-lifers across this nation. The pattern is the point. It's not one case, it's a culture. The alphabet agencies have gone from public servants to political soldiers. Let's connect the dots. When pro-life activists prayed outside abortion clinics, the FBI raided their homes and with rifles drawn. When parents protested gender madness in Loudoun County, Virginia, the DOJ labeled them domestic terrorists. When BLM burnt cities, looted stores, and assaulted officers, Soros-funded DAs bailed them out before the ashes cooled because, it was mostly peaceful protesting. Just ask CNN. When January 6 protesters walked through open doors and took selfies, the DOJ threw the bookshelf, and the whole library at them. Unless you were the pipe bomber. That's not justice. That's retribution wrapped in bureaucracy. They even allowed Antifa arsonists to get lighter sentences than a guy waving an American flag. The bureaucratic mafia, FBI, DOJ, DHS, IRS, and OSHA, all working like branches of the same political crime family. The Biden White House tried using OSHA to force vaccines into private workplaces. Then DHS tried to stop landlords from evicting tenants who hadn't paid in over a year, as if property rights were optional. Then came the IRS expansion, 87,000 new agents, not to audit billionaires, but to watch your Venmo account when you split the lunch bill. Because tyranny doesn't always arrive with tanks. Sometimes it shows up in a letter with the IRS stamped final notice. Follow the money. Follow the manipulation. This is the Soros effect, but the prosecutors control the narrative. They silence opposition. They fund the DAs who refuse to prosecute crime while pouring money into campaigns that criminalize conservatives. It's a two-tier system funded by one ideology. The globalist left's dream of selective justice. They call it equity. We call it political immunity. Code justice, warm lies. While Trump faced raid after raid and investigation after investigation, Hunter Biden was busy painting his way out of felonies. The FBI had time to chase parents and PTA meetings, but not Epstein's client list. And that was reported at the time, and I wish they would still do it today. Also, not the pipe bomber, as you can see. They had time to storm a pro-life father's home at dawn, but not a single dawn raid for the BLM leaders who laundered donation money into mansions. Arctic frost wasn't the beginning. It was the revelation. The mask finally slipped off. The Justice Department is now Just Us Department. Frozen Republic, boiling church. Here's the real danger. When justice goes cold, rage heats up. When people stop believing in fairness, they stop believing in order. And when they stop believing in order, chaos rushes in like a winter storm. The church must stand right now, and so must patriots. Not for party, but for principle. Isaiah said, judgment is turned away backward and justice standeth afar off. Truth is fallen in the street. That's not prophecy anymore. That's the daily headlines. Melt the frost, bring the fire. This isn't about Trump alone. It's about every mom, dad, pastor, patriot, business owner, and believer who dared to say, no, I will not bow to your new gods. They're freezing America into silence and calling it safety, but the truth is fireproof. So keep your eyes open, keep your Bible open, keep your convictions hot, and let's break through all of this Arctic frost. They used January 6th to justify going after conservatives. Even TPUSA, they were investigating and probing into and trying to do everything they could to silence Charlie Kirk even before the assassin would ever get there. This is the radical left. This is what they were attempting to do. This is what they were using January 6th for, but yet they wouldn't investigate into who planted these pipe bombs. Now they want to flip the script on us left and right. But here is what the FBI investigator had to say, one of the top lead investigators under the Biden administration. He stated, and I quote, there's some data that was corrupted by one of the providers, not purposely by them, right? It just unusual circumstances that we have corrupted data. So they claim that they couldn't check into the phone records and all of that because the data was corrupted. But yet somehow, some way, the Biden FBI failed to be able to do it because of corrupted data, but Trump's FBI was able to use that same data to track down and figure out who the suspect was in the pipe bombing incident, who actually confessed to it in court. And so we can see that this had to be a lie. It was an absolute lie, once again, from the lying Biden administration. And so what they couldn't do in 4 years, Trump's FBI did in less than a year. Or maybe they never desired to figure out who it was in the first place. And we'll talk about the reason why in a moment. But here's Pam Bondi telling us how easy it was for them to figure out who it was.
Let me be clear. There was no new tip. There was no new witness. Just good, diligent police work and prosecutorial work, working as a team along with ATF, Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police Department, and of course, the FBI.
But of course, in the the left's Trump derangement syndrome, they're going to try to flip the script and they're going to say that this is all President Trump's fault. It took so long because Trump was not really trying to crack down on it. Here is the lying Democrat Party for you. This just shows you the characteristic type of the radical left. Here is their response to that.
Looking at this crowd doing a victory lap when all the senior FBI officials across all key divisions have been fired for political purposes. It's a little rich that they're saying America's safer. How much earlier could we have caught this guy if resources hadn't been diverted?
Do you understand the insanity and the stupidity here? I can't even believe this guy thinks that's even a good line to say. He's saying, well, Trump could have figured it out quicker if he would have been using the resources to go after it quicker. Biden didn't do it in 4 years, even after upping the Capitol Police budget up 7 times more than the 9/11 era. 4+ years, Biden couldn't do it, but President Trump's administration does it in less than a year. And this guy's going to come out and say that he could have done it quicker if he would have been using the resources there instead of using it to blow up narco boats, instead of using it to crack down on crime and lawlessness in the streets. He could have figured it out even quicker. Hey, I got news for you. Maybe if Biden's administration wasn't funding drag queens in Germany, and maybe if they wouldn't have been upping the budget and trying to increase all of their budgets to go after conservatives and grandmas and people just waving American flags that had nothing to do with any form of violence on that day, maybe the Biden administration would have been able to crack the case sooner. But hey, maybe the reason why they didn't crack it is because they had a narrative and then they found out the suspect doesn't fit the narrative. Here's your intelligent, mighty Hazan, mighty nutcase over here that is trying to tell you why they weren't going to find the criminal.
When you consider how black criminals and Muslim terrorists are treated, both by the legal system and by the media, and yet the January 6th pipe bomber who laid explosives in front of the RNC and DNC headquarters still walks free, we still don't take domestic terrorism of the far-right white variety seriously in this country, do we?
Okay, Mighty Hassan says, we're not going to figure out who the pipe bomber is because he's a far-right white extremist. He's one of those white supremacists. And so here is the white guy for you. There you go. Get a good look at it. There is the far alt-right guy. That is your MAGA far-right white supremacist for you. That's Mighty Hassan. That's CNN. That's PMSNBC. That's the drive-by lamestream media. That's their reporting. They were telling the American people that we're not going to figure out who the criminal is because he's a white guy. They're not going to crack down on a white guy. They want to go after black people and they want to go after brown skinned people. They want to go after people that are foreigners because they're racist. They're the Ku Klux Klan 2.0. They're the brown shirt Nazis all over again. Maybe the reason why the Biden administration didn't want to release the photograph or try to go after the man that was planting the pipe bombs is because the suspect didn't fit the narrative. Because I guess to the radical left, this is the new normal. Men can be women, women can be men, boys can be girls, girls can be boys. And guess what? I guess black is white and white is black now. Welcome to the new normal from the radical left. This is their thinking process. This is the lies that they push and peddle. And this is why we must defeat the lamestream media and we must defeat the radical left in the midterms. These were the same ones that pushed the Russian collusion hoax. They pushed the Hunter laptop Biden lies. They lied throughout all of COVID-19. They lied about the Afghan refugees being vetted. And just about every time they open their mouth, they're lying to you. And now they want you to know that the January 6th pipe bomber was a MAGA supporter that was upset about the election being stolen. But newsflash, the very suspect, it has been proven that he started collecting and purchasing the materials to put this pipe bomb together in 2019, long before there was even concerns with the election. But if you go to the lamestream media, if you go to Google, every one of them are trying to push the narrative that this was a far alt-right MAGA supporter that was upset with the election results, and so therefore he was trying to bomb the Capitol buildings. He was a Trump supporter that was mad that Trump lost the election because they rigged it and stole it. May I tell you, though, that the problem I have with this is, first of all, then why was he collecting everything to put the bomb together in 2019 when President Trump, it looked like he was probably going to win? It was shocking to us. We knew there had to be shenanigans when he lost the election. And if you have a problem with me saying shenanigans, then let me point you to the Time magazine article that you can research and find yourself, how the secret shadow campaign won the 2020, saved the 2020 election. And they detail how they did it. And so we know there was shenanigans being played. However, if this person was really upset about the election results, then he wouldn't have been putting it together in 2019. He would have been rushing it and putting it out pretty quickly, which doesn't even make sense itself. And we also find that when he planted the bombs, he didn't discriminate. He planted one at the Democrat National Committee, and he planted bombs at the Republican National Committee. So he was an equal distribution opportunist. He was going to bomb all of them. Now, we don't know what his political ideology is. We really don't know. Some are saying that they know, but the truth of the matter is we don't know on the left and we don't know on the right whether he was a Democrat or a Republican. We really don't know. As a matter of fact, it seems like the family ties, the father and the lawyer, seem to be having connections with trying to help illegals to get off the hook. So I don't know. It looks like he might have been more leaning left. But the truth of the matter is that's all alleged. Neither one of us know whether he was a political Republican or a Democrat. And we're not going to come out and try to say that we do know until we fully investigate and we are able to provide that. That's the problem I have with the lamestream drive-by media. They just want to be the first one to report, and it doesn't matter if it's factual or not. And they don't care who they hurt, as long as they get ratings. Look, we want subscribers too, which, by the way, if you want ideological purity and you want truth in the world of noise, why don't you hit that subscribe button? And why don't you give us a thumbs up, share us with somebody else, leave us a comment, and let others know about the reporting and the investigative work that we're doing. We are not trying to be the first ones. This is why I didn't want to come on air yesterday either, even though I did have some changing in my schedule conflict. I'm kind of glad because I wanted to do more investigation work into this situation and matter. We're not trying to be the first. We're trying to be the most accurate. Now, look, I always tell you that if we get it wrong, we'll come on air and we'll tell you, we'll confess that, we'll admit that. We'll put our pride aside and we'll let you know, because integrity matters the most to us. So if we find out that this man was a MAGA supporter, we'll come on air and we'll be the first ones to tell you that when we actually know, not making an accusation of that. But it doesn't make any sense to me why he would be putting a pipe bomb together in 2019 if he's upset with the election results, and why the Biden administration wouldn't have released that if he was a MAGA supporter. It looked like he didn't fit the narrative, so they began to let it go while they weaponized every department to go after conservatives to lock up grandmas if they wore a MAGA hat. And they talked about Trump not using the resources to crack this sooner, even though he did it in less than a year, while Biden's administration was funding kids being transed overseas instead of trying to figure out who this pipe bomber is. And so we want to be absolutely honest and integritable. And once we have any indication what his political beliefs were, we'll release that. However, right now, it seems to me that he didn't fit the narrative for the radical left, so they didn't want to investigate it, and they didn't want to bring the suspect before court because they didn't want the truth getting out there. This is the lying administration of President Joe Sleepy Biden and Calamity Kamala Harris, Christopher Wray, Anthony Blinken. That whole administration lied through their teeth over and over and over again to us. And this is why I'm trying to tell you, we cannot allow the mainstream, lamestream, drive-by media pollute our minds and get us to vote that that trash of ideology back into office so that it tears up the United States of America. So it tramples on our liberties and our freedoms, so that it tries to come after our religious freedoms, our freedom of speech. These were the ones that wanted to weaponize every department to silence us. They were also the ones that shuttered our churches during COVID-19. They were the ones that wanted to even use the U.S. Postal Service to spy out on conservatives, to try to shut us down, even trying to freeze our assets if they would have had the opportunity and the ability. And if you think they changed, they haven't changed. They rebranded, and they'll come back with vengeance, and they'll push their agenda even harder. That's why we must defeat them in the midterms. Now, I believe at the situation, probably, I allege that the situation with this pipe bomber was probably some form of mental illness. And we know there's spiritual implications to all of these things as well. Well, that is the special Saturday Revealed report. I wanted to come on air. I did not want to wait till Monday because the lamestream media is constantly pushing their narrative. They're pushing and peddling their lies and their conspiracies. And so I didn't want that to set in all weekend and then come back on Monday to try to slash through all of that to give you clarity. I wanted to come on air today, and I wanted to blast through all the lies, and I wanted to present the truth and what we know to you as of right now. We want to say that we are praying for the President of the United States. We are praying for the law officers on the federal level and the local level. We are praying for this Granite City police officer that was hideously shot by this criminal that they did finally catch this morning. We thank God for that. We do pray for everybody's soul, but we do believe in justice being served. If you are in the police force, we want to say God bless you. We are praying for you. We're not sure how anybody stays in the police force today, but we're thankful that you are trying to keep our city safe. We know that police officers are like everybody else. There is no perfect group, but we're thankful that the majority of them are trying to do the best they can to keep people safe on the streets, and they don't get paid what they're worth. And so we say, God bless you. Our prayers are with you. If you haven't got it and you would like to get it, my book, The Final Flame, a novel mystery thriller packed with all types of suspense, packed with all types of plot twists, good, clean romance, truth in there. Nobody was able to guess the ending of the book. I think you would enjoy it. Even if you're not a reader, I think it'll keep you on the edge of your seat. You can get it on Amazon unless you want a signed edition, and you can get that by emailing us at revealedpublications@gmail.com. We can give you the details on how you can get a signed edition. If you missed it this morning, my boys put out their recent podcast episodes. The first one was the Biblical American Kids podcast with Camden J. Wilson. And the second one was Get in the Game with Jesus with Levi Wilson. I want to say thank you to all the Revealed Radio Network staff, all the podcast hosts that are doing a wonderful, wonderful job. If you haven't caught it, Austin Skinner's Firm Foundation, if you like biblical content, you'll like to get on there and view his podcast. If you like, if you're a lady that wants good encouragement nowadays in the midst of all the craziness, you ought to listen to Strength to Carry Through with Kayla Skinner. I'll be back on air with the Oracle podcast, diving back into the Bible on Thursday night. And if the Republic has not totally been burned down by Monday, I will see you Monday on the Revealed Report. God bless you, America. I love you. Have a great weekend.